I'm Andy Dunmeyer, host of Sketchy Design. We design everything from software to cities, so why not our social lives? Which made me wonder, what are the key ingredients of genuine connection? And can we intentionally create spaces that foster deep relationships, almost by design?
People understand that when you go on a retreat, for a weekend away with someone, you come back with a bunch of new friends. Why? Well, it's because you had a captive audience basically for 48 hours and everyone had no place else to go. And so they all became friends and you had enough kind of repeat interactions with people that you reach kind of like friendship escape velocity, for lack of a better word.
That's David Litwak, CEO of Maxwell Social, a 2-year-old members club in the Tribeca neighborhood of Lower Manhattan.
So we've been figuring out a lot of this kind of stuff. How do you build a scaffolding for community? And I'd say that we're pretty close to nailing it.
David joins me to share the story behind the intentional evolution of Maxwell Social. At the height of the global pandemic and in the heart of New York City, David set out to establish a local members club where genuine friendships can flourish. But how would he design genuine connections? That's a core question we're exploring. And I'm curious if the same design thinking principles we use to design products could be of any use in fostering those genuine relationships. First though, David can get us caught up on Maxwell Social.
A couple generations ago, they had adult fraternities. They were called Kiwanis, Elks, Moose, Rotarians, American Legion, the local Italian-American men's club. And the difference, of course, was that they were sorted based on race, ethnicity, religion. And as our generation, I'm 37, plus or minus a couple generations, doesn't really want to organize like that anymore. Those institutions have fallen by the wayside. And unfortunately, a necessary byproduct of that is that we don't have these kind of second homes for us to hang out in anymore. We don't have real communities. Obviously, I think it's a positive and necessary change that we don't continue organizing based on those organizing principles, but there is a downside to it that we should acknowledge and understand how to mitigate and create something new that doesn't have the negatives of the past, but has the positives of the past. So we don't consider ourselves like the Soho House of the world. We interview members 4 times before they join. Everyone goes through a 3-month cohort that is full of small, intimate, new member dinners. We ask people once they kind of graduate into becoming a full member to join committees, and host events and come up with ideas. Twice a month we do something called family dinner where members cook for other members. We have a space that's built very differently than any other members club in that we have kitchens members can cook in, and we do not have a restaurant. We're not open during the day, Monday through Thursday until 6 p.m. So we don't want to become kind of a glorified co-working space, or a gated restaurant. So I think the ultimate answer to, what a social club should be is it should be a group of friends. And we've taken it upon ourselves to kind of reverse engineer society to some extent, not to sound overly grandiose, but how did these friendships used to be created? Well, it was again, small college, community, or small, Greek life, or clubs, or a small town once you graduated in like a Friday Night Lights, level of regular interaction with people.
No journey is a straight line, and Maxwell Social's path to today was paved with learning. Much of it, as it turns out, echoing the principles of design thinking. Through understanding needs, experimenting solutions, and adapting based on feedback, they discovered that clear boundaries could actually foster better relationships, while being systematic rather than just hoping for the best.
We used to think that we could have more of a hybrid model, but we just realized people don't know boundaries. And I hate to say it, early experiments in honor code didn't quite work. So we have, pretty strict delineations now, and learn, what's that phrase? Good fences make good neighbors, or something like that. And kind of understanding here's where the line is, that's it. And being really clear about the communication. We pretty, aggressively lean into this idea that we're building adult Greek life. We're building, we're bringing back, your grandpa's fraternal order. And, we didn't create the house party. But I mean, you could argue that we're, one of the only places out there that's trying to do it systematically and programmatically, and as part of something you can actually sign up for, as opposed to something you really hope your rich friend with a big house throws a party and invites some cool people, which is really what we're relegated to now. I think there was this idea at the beginning that like we were going to launch this club, everyone would join, and we'd want to hang out with each other all the time, kind of a thing, and because of that, we built a lot of spaces that were built for 8 to 10 people hanging out. So like, couches and big chairs and poofs, and this kind of idea like at a house party, how could you cram 15 to 20 people into this seating area? And what we quickly realized, and the turning point was a friend of my girlfriend was sat her down at the club and tried to tell her that she was pregnant, and I think they were interrupted like 5 or 6 times because they were sitting at a big table, and we kind of jokingly like called it was there. These are come and join me spaces. Like if you're sitting there, they almost signal that you're open to conversation, but they weren't open to conversation. They were trying to have a private conversation. And while we do generally have a predisposition to saying like this is a place where we want people to be social, that doesn't necessarily mean that's a place you want to be social with everyone. You could be wanting to have a 2-on-2 conversation. We basically started building way more 1-on-1 and 2-on-2 spots. We got a bunch more bistro tables, and we started laying out the spaces. We actually took away a few of the couches because we felt like it was too hard to create spaces with these big couches we had, started building a little bit more of a spot that would resemble what you'd be able to get at a restaurant. And we were extremely against this at the beginning. We were like, no banquettes, it can't be like a restaurant. We came to really we completely changed our opinion on banquettes, just because there's something very psychologically safe about being in a corner banquet and having your back protected. I think there's actually an evolutionary reason there. But we also kind of realized that if you're gonna get people round, they might not go out that evening with the intention of saying we're gonna make a big night of it and meet a ton of friends and meet up with a bunch of people. They might just be like, I just want to grab a drink with one friend. But if they grab a drink with that one friend in the right place, the night could escalate. They can meet some people. You want to maximize for serendipity. So even if it's not like the most social use case, you want to figure out where your Goldilocks zone is for how many social use cases you want to accommodate. We obviously draw a line. We don't have a restaurant. You could argue that, well, dinner is a social use case. You should serve dinner. And it is, but we had to draw our line somewhere. And it was moving it farther towards someplace where you can have intimate conversations, but not so far where it's like here, like we're going to have full kitchen service.
David gave me another example of experimentation when he described the introduction of a point of sale system, or a POS, which for the first time allowed members to order their own drinks with their own saved payment information, saving everyone time and money. But the real story behind the POS goes deeper than efficiency. Having the system allowed the club to deposit credits into accounts, addressing a deeper observed problem.
Say of your $250 you pay every month, $50 is now free drink credit. And that was a realization that many members were only showing up when we threw an event or a party. And it was because we don't have a restaurant and we don't allow co-working Monday through Thursday, there wasn't a habit of using it for their own purposes. They weren't grabbing drinks with friends here. It was kind of like I go to Maxwell when there's fun stuff, and when David tells me to, and when there's not, I don't go. And we realized that's not the intention. We were paying for a bartender to be here every Monday through Thursday from 6 p.m. onwards, and not that many people were coming. And then they'd all show up on a Friday, and we're like, okay, you told us you want this, but you're not coming. So we instituted, in this last cohort, we gave every new member a 10-person open bar for free. As long as it was on Friday or Saturday, we basically said you can bring your own friends. And we want to demonstrate that this is a place where you can do this and bring your friends. We want to build habits, and it was a really big success. A bunch of members who joined this cohort came to one of those parties through friends of friends and go, oh, this is really awesome, this is fun, this is kind of what I was looking for. And but it was also brutally hard to organize. We were emailing people, nagging. I was like, by the way, remember you have this free thing, you should use it. And we were just like, well, let's have a system to do that. And then how do we do that systematically for everyone? Can we say, hey, every single month that expires, you get a certain amount of reminders. So now so I announced this during our birthday party, and one of these girls who's been a member for about a year, he was in tech, kind of came up to me and joked, just like, you're A/B testing on humans. And I was like, yeah, we are. We were doing something very experimental. And it took a lot of experiments, and there was some collateral damage to those experiments, which are members coming in going, yeah, that wasn't a great experience, and leaving. And sometimes I look back on those people like, oh, I really wish if we had nailed that, would they still be here? And probably the answer for some of them is yes.
Building upon some tough early learnings, the members' POS system clearly unlocks a lot of reciprocal value for the community. But as a club with growth aspirations, I was curious about the cohort system. How does Maxwell Social bridge newcomers into this established community, making them feel connected and welcome, authentically themselves?
I think we're not reinventing the wheel. I think like if you look at any successful community institution, they all have some degree of onboarding, whether it's fraternities and sororities, it's called a pledge class. If it's you're going to business school, it's called a section. If you're joining some, bigger organization, it might be called a fellowship, or, basically we're doing the same thing where we're saying, hey, look, we've got it's a big community, and here are the 40 people that we think, that are joining at the same time as you. And of those, we'll probably get along. Hopefully you'll get along with all of them, but, you'll really get along with maybe 15 to 20 of them, and maybe 3 or 4 of them will be extremely good friends. And how do we smash them into enough, a situation such that they make those friendships? People understand that when you go on a retreat, for a weekend away with someone, you come back with a bunch of new friends. Why? Well, it's because you had a captive audience basically for 48 hours, and everyone had no place else to go, and so they all became friends, and you had enough kind of repeat interactions with people that you reach kind of like friendship escape velocity, for lack of a better word. We don't really get that in modern society anymore. You might meet someone cool at a house party. This happens all the time. I meet some guy on the soccer field, and we have a bunch of mutual friends, and we're like, oh, cool, yeah, you seem chill, and like we get along pretty well. And then chances are I never see him again. And it's the city, or I see him again in 6 months at some random other house party, and we exchange numbers and we try to get together, and it doesn't work out because so and so's got something else. And so you don't reach that escape velocity with friendships in normal life anymore. So regularity really matters, and we basically provide an on-ramp to kind of figure that out. Is it planned when we set up, we say, let's all cook dinner, and people start chopping zucchini, and tell them to go chop zucchini, right? But at what point did you set up the playing field such that you knew how the players would act? And it makes me sound like a very Machiavellian holding the strings or something here. But I think that people respond to the social situations and the cues that they have. You walk into a nightclub, you're not going to go introduce yourself and be like, hey, what are your feelings on today's politics? Okay, that's not the situation that is, that begs that approach. I think the same thing is true here. We constructed our place. We had an early saying, kitchen islands, not bars. The general gist is that we want to prioritize people behind the kitchen island working together, as opposed to a division of labor between in front of the bar and behind the bar. And people in the end want an espresso martini or something. They don't want to prep themselves. So we do have bartenders as well. But it's the spirit of that statement holds. And so this kind of feeling of walking into your friend's Shabbat dinner and everyone's cooking, and you can just go and help, and you ask if there's anything you can do, and you kind of know that because everyone's there, well, you don't feel awkward being like, hey, my name is David, who are you? And you meet someone new. That's the general vibe.
I love that idea or vibe of a second home, where it's more about being together than going someplace, and where you can truly be yourself. But I'm really curious, does all this intentional effort to create that environment actually translate into genuine connections and a sense of real value for the members of Maxwell Social?
So we're 2 years in, and one of the things we spent the last 2 years figuring out is this membership kind of strategy. We now have cohort leads for each of the, we divide our cohort into two. It's called Chaplin and Monroe, named after Charlie Chaplin and Marilyn Monroe, who were two contemporaries of Elsa Maxwell, who she used to party with at the Waldorf Astoria. And we divide them, and they have cohort leads from the last cohort. And so how do you empower people to take some leadership without it evolving into, the worst of local community boards that I've had experience in New York, where you really don't want to, necessarily empower the wrong person. So we've been figuring out a lot of this kind of stuff. How do you build a scaffolding for community? And I'd say that, we're pretty close to nailing it. We see a, exponential jump in interest, and an exponential jump, importantly, in members referring other members. And so, which means that there's a extremely high NPS score experience that's being developed, and that hasn't always been the case, bluntly. Our goal is to do that for the people we like. we kind of joke that our people are socially functional nerds, and it's people who are doing cool things in the world but still enjoy a conversation and like to party, but also enjoy a salon, etc. And so that's our type of people. But there's it's hard to say this, but there should be no hard feelings if they reject us or we reject them. That's kind of how it should be. Everyone should be trying to find their place in the world.
So yes, it's clear. We can intentionally design spaces that foster genuine connection. And what I find maybe even more exciting is that the design thinking principles, like understanding needs, prototyping solutions, and iterating based on feedback, are surprisingly effective in incubating, building, and sustaining genuine connections. And talking with David brought back some unexpected personal memories from what feels like a lifetime ago, when I too was building social online communities. But it made me wonder about the established science behind social connection. And as it turns out, the US Surgeon General issued a 2023 report on the epidemic of loneliness. It emphasizes the serious effects on physical, mental, and community health caused by loneliness and social disconnection. But also in the report is a really clear framework for how we can think about building social connections. The US Surgeon General lists 3 vital components of social connection. Structure, being the number and variety of relationships, and the frequency of interactions. Function refers to the degree to which relationships serve our various needs. And quality as the positive and negative aspects of relationships and interactions. So let's apply this framework to understand how Maxwell Social is building their community. Maxwell Social intentionally builds structure by offering a variety of hosted events and a cohort system that ensure frequent, small group interactions for forming initial and ongoing relationships. They've built a second home atmosphere, their Goldilocks zone, for authentic connections, designed to meet various social needs and build serendipitous interaction habits. And finally, Maxwell Social actively learns from member feedback, observations, and data, adapting their spaces and interactions to foster positive and engaging connections that ultimately strengthen the overall community. Well, there you have it. Maxwell Social is a fascinating case study in effectively designing deep social connections that reach what David calls friendship escape velocity through intentional structure, function, and quality. I hope you enjoyed this journey as much as I have. But before we wrap up, I was curious where David imagines Maxwell Social heading in the future.
Now, we are looking at expansion, but we're looking, very strategically and slowly and deliberately. We eventually have goals, that are quite massive. We want to build 1,000, of Maxwell clubs in the next 20 years. And that might sound a bit crazy and Silicon Valley world changey, but we, there's still 45,000 Rotarian clubs around the world. That's one of those fraternal orgs that really no one within our age range would ever join. And, there's, 45,000 of them. And we think that we've mastered a scalable community business model. We are building out tech at every single layer of what we're doing, not just the POS system. And it's not just for members' benefits. We're figuring out exactly how we control all of our costs. Why occasionally do I still walk in for a 12-person dinner and there's 5 staff when there should be 2 or 3? Things like that, and just streamlining it. We're verticalizing everything. We kind of joke Uberizing hospitality. And similar to Uber saying that we're choosing one form factor, they understood that a Prius was all people needed. We understand that for a community, you really need it. You need a space, and it's events and membership. You don't need a hotel, spa, a restaurant, a co-working space, all those different things. You need a membership model where people actually have strong affiliation with each other. In the past, again, it was we're all Italian, and for Maxwell, it's something very different. And a place that you can throw events, the celebrations for those members, and that's what we have. So we think that's a scalable business model. History has proven that it is a scalable business model, and how we launch the modern version of that is our entire goal.
Thank you for listening, and thank you, David, for sharing your context and process of your journey.
Well, thanks a lot for having me, Andy. I appreciate it.
Maxwell Social is accepting rolling applications, so here in early May, there's still a couple of months until the next cohort. You can learn more at maxwellsocial.com, on X or Instagram, both at Maxwell Social. And please subscribe to Sketchy Design wherever you get your podcasts. If you've got a great story or know someone who does, please reach out. Just look for the podcast info on our website, sketchydesign.com. Stay curious.